You've arrived, obviously, at our Leading Green Cities, Making the Environment a Priority session. The format of today's session is going to be just an easy roundtable discussion featuring mayors who have focused on making the environment a priority in their communities. I encourage, again, the audience to offer questions if you see appropriate. And from there, I think we will get started. I want to first introduce our esteemed panel of mayors from the Mid-Atlantic states. We have Juandiego Wade from Charlottesville, Virginia, Danene Sorace from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and Steve Williams from Huntington, West Virginia. I'd like to just quickly do a brief biography of each of our mayors, and then we will dive right into the questions. So Mayor Wade joined Charlottesville City Council in January of 2022 and has served as mayor since January of this year. Prior to that, he served 4 terms on the Charlottesville School Board. He holds a master's degree in urban and environmental planning from the University of Virginia. And I'm sure he'll be proud to announce this during today's session that in 2022, Charlottesville adopted its first climate action plan. Mayor Williams was elected the mayor of Huntington, West Virginia in November 2012, re-elected in 2016, and again in November 2020 to become Huntington's first 3-term mayor. Under his leadership this April, Huntington was named a $3 million grand prize winner of the America's Best Communities competition for a comprehensive plan to transform Huntington into the economic gateway of the Appalachian region. This plan included revitalizing old factories and brownfields into the Huntington Brownfields Innovation Zone, which is set to become a diverse development situated between the Ohio River, Marshall University, and downtown Huntington. It's a 75-acre area that already includes a new baseball stadium for Marshall University and will encompass a robotics welding training center, as well as a space for a hotel, conference room, and some retail shops. Mayor Williams is the past president and current board member of the West Virginia Municipal League and also serves on the board of directors of the National League of Cities and the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So welcome, Mayor Williams. And Mayor Sorace, thank you so much for joining us. Mayor Sorace serves as the 43rd mayor of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, my home state, which I'm very proud of. She brings her experience as a nonprofit leader, environmental advocate, and city councilor to the role of mayor. She set forth a vision of building a stronger, more equitable Lancaster block by block, and that's underscored by 4 strategic priorities: strong neighborhoods, safe places, a sustainable economy, and sound government. Mayor Sorace is the former president of the Pennsylvania Municipal League. She serves on the U.S. Conference of Mayors Water Council and was selected to join the Mayor's Innovation Project Institute on Pedestrian Safety. In her time as mayor, she's launched the Department of Neighborhood Engagement to elevate neighborhoods and empower residents, secure record grants to remediate land, and promote safe streets, and also made historic investments in affordable housing. So with all that being said, Mayors Wade, Sorace, and Williams, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited for this conversation. I just want to kick it off with my first question, which I would love for you to tell me about your city and some of the environmental success stories that you've led. What's been your biggest win, either personally or as a city during your term? Basically, now's your chance to brag, and we will start with Mayor Wade. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Rob. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning and this opportunity to talk about the city of Charlottesville. Just a little bit about Charlottesville. I like, to say I'm the mayor of the great city of Charlottesville. I'm sure other mayors feel the same way. But Charlottesville is about 10 square miles. We're pretty small, population of about 50,000 people. And it's been 50,000 for the past several decades, but the makeup of that 50,000 has changed. We are probably the most expensive place in the Commonwealth of Virginia to live. Is highly desirable. Home of the University of Virginia, with the #1 wine region in the world. So it's very desirable, I think, from our location. But we have been in this game of climate work for about 25 years now. We first started this in 2006 with the U.S. Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement, and we have been keeping track of our emissions, and now we publish our greenhouse gases and emissions annually. We do this annually. In 2019, we adopted our first climate goals, and as part of that that is also part of the global covenant of mayors. There's a lot of we like to participate in a lot of these different commissions that what we can get from that is that we're able to glean insight from other cities, what they're doing. In 2023, we adopted our first community-wide climate action plan, and it took a lot of work to do that, and has key strategies on how to reduce emissions for all of our community sectors. Also, in 2023, in our local budget, with local money, we put $1 million aside in our capital improvement plan. And this is $1 million that we want to use to invest in meeting the goals and things that we said that we want to do. We want to put our money where our mouth is, as we like to say. And what we're going to be using that money for, we're going to use it for clean energy projects for our city buildings, our schools, supporting foundational studies for climate and sustainability work, alternative forms of transportation. We have established a local energy hub to assist community members in assessing a lot of different incentives and things like that. So we are really excited about where what we're doing and where we're going. We have a very engaged community here that is keeping us on track, which I love. And so those are a few of the things that we're doing, Rob.
That's wonderful to hear. I really appreciate that. Mayor Williams, let's hear about Huntington.
If you're not familiar with where Huntington is, the Ohio River heading south from Pitt, just as it starts to towards it's where Huntington is. It's right where Ohio and Kentucky come. You hear us saying often that we are the gateway into the Appalachian region, because once you go just a little bit to the west, I mean, it is Midwest clearly, and it's not the mountain region. I have an advantage of being in office for 12 years. Longevity gives you an opportunity to be able to get some things done. And early on, we started partnering with our partners at the EPA, and particularly in brownfields, to be able to address all of the brownfields in Huntington. Huntington was founded 152 years ago to be the western terminus of the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway. We started as a railroad town, and as a result of that, and in the midst of the Industrial Revolution, factories started springing up in the Ohio River Valley, but particularly in Huntington. We had railroad car manufacturers, and then other companies that came and started building manufacturing plants within the area, started building throughout the Ohio River Valley and in Huntington in particular. The challenge that we are having now at the turn of the 21st century is that these are factories that are well over 100 years old and are either rusted out or shut down, and what do we do with them? So many of them have just rusted out over about a 20-year period of being, thus the name, the Rust Belt. But these factory plants or brownfields that needed to be addressed. And the challenge that we were having was, how do we put together assessment plans? How do we start creating marketing plans to be able to develop these? And once again, the partnership that we had with EPA was immeasurable. Now, and we got to work actively on that, and what was being mentioned earlier by Rob about the 100+ acre area where we have been able to demolish the former railroad car manufacturer that's right next to the university, sitting right on the river, has all of the utilities that are necessary there. we were finally able to go and negotiate the acquisition of the property. But the fortunate thing is being right next to a university and being able to take full advantage of all of the research capacity to be able to turn ourselves away from the dawn of the Industrial Revolution in the 1870s to now the dawn of the digital age, and how we're able to take full advantage of that sitting right next to the university. All told, with the baseball stadium and other developments that are occurring there in this area, we have a $126 million of investment that's already coming into the market. And frankly, with the nearly $900,000 of assessment grants and others that we have had there, and also not just in this one market, in the markets throughout Huntington, there was an old clothing manufacturer that shut down, and it's now owned by Coalfield Development that has been receiving awards nationally for all that they have been doing, and they have taken that, and then in some degrees it then serves as an incubator to be able to teach individuals how to be able to be trained for the new climate environment, and be able to, in the midst of coal country, to be proceeding with solar panel installations and such as this. The whole point simply being, with all of these things, is that as we're looking forward to further into the 21st century, we see that our community is finally starting to respond to the environmental needs, and fortunately, we have a full participating partner in the United States EPA.
Thank you, Mayor Williams. Really appreciate that. That's a great synopsis of the amazing things that are happening in Huntington. So, and of course, we will turn it over now to Mayor Sorace from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Go ahead, Mayor Sorace.
Hi, Rob. It's nice to see you and to also see my mayor colleagues again. Thank you for having me. First, Lancaster is a city of about 60,000. We are a very dense, walkable community that is also quite diverse. And so when I mention that I'm the mayor of Lancaster, the first thing people think about are Amish and horse and buggies. And yes, we have a few of those that ride through town. And while we also have those deep Anabaptist and Pennsylvania Dutch roots, we also have a very large immigrant and refugee population. And people are surprised to hear that 40% of our community is Hispanic, largely from Puerto Rico. And after Spanish, the most commonly requested translation service for the city is Swahili. So we have a very large number of Congolese refugees that have resettled here in Lancaster. And so I'm really proud of the diversity of our community, and that brings with it interesting opportunities and challenges as it relates to environmental initiative. But some of our recent success stories are really just building on our success in our nationally recognized green infrastructure initiatives. We have over 400 stormwater and green infrastructure BMPs throughout the city. We've been told that we have the most square foot per capita of green roofs in the country. And we're capturing about 65 million gallons of stormwater annually. And this is really important because like many old cities, 700 of them across the United States, we are one of the cities that has a combined sewer system. And so we are actively working to address our combined sewer overflows. We also have a new comprehensive plan for the city called Our Future Lancaster. And that dedicates over, it's about 70 acres of land along our river as a nature preserve. And this is the first time the city's ever had this kind of open space that will be given to nature. And we're planning to also develop an environmental center to really elevate the environmental issues of Lancaster County. And we here in the Chesapeake Bay watershed take our responsibility to clean water and to the health and vitality of the Chesapeake Bay watershed very seriously. And this is another effort, another step that we are taking as part of our comp plan to really continue that focus and that work. So thank you very much, Rob.
Thank you, Mayor Sorace. That was great. My next question actually touches, I think, upon something that Mayor Williams had mentioned a little bit earlier. And it's really, in some places, a lot of folks view environmental programs as almost unnecessary nice to haves or add-ons or too costly, whatever the case may be. So I wanted to get a sense of what has been your biggest obstacle, if there have been any, on kind of ascertaining and getting that community buy-in for environmental programs and environmental issues. And we'll go now reverse order. We'll start with Mayor Sorace. So feel free to take it away.
Wow. Okay, getting a resident buy-in is critical for lots of things. I mean, we struggle with our tree canopy, our urban tree canopy, and just getting residents to think long-term about cooling and greening our city when it means that they might have sidewalk repair bills in the future. And so just the door-to-door communication that we've really embraced here in the city to actively engage residents in thinking about environmental issues. I would say that, having an EPA consent decree definitely motivates the city to take on responsibilities related to green infrastructure. And we've been working on that even before the consent decree. But I will say it's really helpful in some ways to have that, to be able to communicate that this isn't a nice to have, it's a must have. And we need to address these issues and we need to engage in different ways as we think about how to transform our largely paved and built over community to becoming a more porous surface for our rainwater. I would also say that we've used mediums like creative placemaking, murals, storytelling, and more to care about local environment. We've done a lot of work around connecting stormwater and litter to the river, collecting stories from years ago when folks would regularly fish and swim in our river. And of course, there's much less of that these days. But our river is responding to our efforts to clean it. And we're activating the river in new ways, as I mentioned, through this preserve that will border the river. So, I think it's just an ongoing communication, but I would also say that we've really broken down the silos across our organization to really think about how we are incorporating environmental best practices in our planning, in our building and development of the city, as well as our legal and policy making. And so when those things can come together, it's not to say it's always easy, but it does mean that there's consistency and visibility to the efforts over time.
That's very well said. So Mayor Williams, from your perspective, getting community buy-in, have you found it to be a challenge? And if not, I mean, what are some of the successful tactics that you've taken to overcome some of those obstacles?
Well, the challenge that we've had principally has been where individuals were not looking at necessarily what we were doing. They were listening to the echoes of others that are complaining about, oh, more regulation that's coming in. We had problems with the MS4 program. So as we were trying to implement that, you can imagine one of the things, there were robocalls that were being called to senior citizens, not from anybody in Huntington, but from other places in other states around the area about the rain tax and such as that. With the MS4 program and with our brownfields programs, what we've been able to do is to get people to focus on the economic impact and the economic growth that actually occurs as a result of us pursuing these issues. For instance, where there is a stream that comes into one part of Huntington that eventually empties into the Ohio, is outside the and it is of the city, pinches down through the neighborhoods, and development that's occurring outside the city. That development is just causing a torrent of water to come down, and it starts to flood into some neighborhoods. And you know who they're wanting to blame. What is the city doing to fix this? And all of the problems are happening outside. That to do is to relieve that, but in the same time begin to educate others as to what is actually happening in the area. And as a result, we've been able to partner with our county commission and the State Department of Transportation, the state itself, to be able to identify ways that we can be addressing those issues that are coming from outside the city into the city. We've been able to stop some flooding that has been a regular occurrence of underpasses coming under the railroad tracks, going from the north side of town to the south side of town. Those underpasses, well, we found that that the stormwater system was not connected to the flooding that was occurring in the underpasses. Well, shoot fire. The one thing that you have to do is it has to have somewhere to go. Once we fix that, now it's amazing. People are talking about we can get from one side of town to the other without the underpasses flooding. But at the same time, with our brownfields programs, and where we are actually having the development that's occurring, everything that we're doing to be able to address environmental concerns and create economic opportunity and prosperity within the community. What we're able to show, all of these things are actually helping us on a rebound. As a result, in the last 12 years that we've been in office, we've had over $514 million of investment in our community by focusing on these areas. And we can point to the community saying, working to make sure that we are environmentally conscious is also creating economic opportunity for us. And as a result of that, and holding on to that vision and building consensus around that vision, folks within the community are buying into what we're doing.
Yeah, that's very well said. It's always great to show that something that has a net positive impact for the entire community and beyond can also have the environmental benefit for everybody in that community and beyond. So it's well stated. Mayor Wade, let's hear your perspective on community buy-in and what you've been doing in Charlottesville.
Yeah, so we have a tremendous community buy-in. Oftentimes I look out in the audience, and when people get up to speak, they're like national, international experts on different forms of climate change, or from the University of Virginia, that will get up and speak. So we generally speaking, we have tremendous buy-in. Where we don't have enough buy-in, not because I don't think that they care, it's because they have other priorities. Is our community of color and community of low wealth that in particular that I feel a special obligation to speak up for. And so I spend time talking with them about the impact of it. And so it's not such as hard sell as maybe it used to be, because they see now it may not rain as much, but when it does rain, it rains a whole lot, and things are really bad, and storms, and then so they see the impact. So it's not like we are trying to convince them or tell them. They see it. Their basement might get flooded, or some things that have been around for a long time and they've never seen things like this before. But also can talk about the benefits that they see, like the mayor of Lancaster talked about the tree canopy and the benefits of that. That I can tell them, like, this would increase assess the value of your home. It will reduce the heating or the air conditioning costs, and just kind of want a place for your child or yourself to sit down under a tree just to relax after a really stressful day. A tree can provide that. And so we have summer camps now for to focus on this community to have where they're planting trees, they see the benefit of it. We have, garden clubs at each of our, schools here in the city where they're growing vegetables that's being used in the school. So they, and we have a botanical garden that's inviting the students in so they can see the benefit of it. So the sale is not as hard as it used to be, but when you have, because it's so expensive to live here, dealing with childcare, working, something like this is just not going to be top on your list. But I think that we'll want them to crack in the top 5, top 2 or 3, so they can see that it's going to benefit themselves and their children, their family in the long run.
That's actually a perfect segue into another question that I had that you touched on wonderfully, Mayor Wade. So thank you for that. It's the theme of this year's summit is equity. So it's focusing on making sure that everyone, regardless of zip code, background, language, whatever, has access to a safe, healthy, and fair environment. So I wanted to throw it open to Mayor Williams and Mayor Sorace to highlight any efforts that you guys have been engaged in on the environmental equity front in your communities.
You want me to go first?
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right, Danene, I'm teeing it up for you, okay? Building upon some of what I had said earlier about trying to reach out to assure that everybody was participating and understanding the end results that can actually benefit others. The one thing that I started to say earlier when you're reading our biographies of all the things that supposedly we have done, I think each of my mayor colleagues will attest. We haven't done anything. It's amazing what our community has been able to do. And a strong leader is going to find ways to be able to reach out into the community and help people start to buy in. For a little while, these individuals see it as their projects. These are their initiatives. And the way that I like to portray it within the community is what's your assignment? What is it? Because every one of us on this call will hear individuals say, and we probably said it ourselves, somebody needs to do something. Well, what I'd say to folks in the community, if this is what you're saying, then look in the mirror. What is it that you're prepared to be able to do? So what we've done is we've reached into the neighborhoods, and neighborhood individuals in the neighborhoods come up with plans as to what it is that they're wanting to address. And as they start to address that, then as they are taking that ownership, then this is something that builds up from the community level, and it isn't something that trickles down from City Hall. And because of that, you're able to make sure that there is an ongoing collaboration, and with that collaboration does lead into success and to hope.
Mayor Sorace, anything to add on that?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I'm going to just go back to our block by block strategy, and I'm reading some of the questions that are in the chat as well. And we've really tried to approach this from an equity lens, first and foremost from language access. Like we cannot really advance equity if we are not able to communicate with our residents. And so we established a language access program. I talked a little bit about the broad number of languages. There's 50 different languages spoken in our school district. So first and foremost, let's be able to talk to each other. The second thing is really meeting the needs at the block level. And so we really utilize both our door-to-door engagement as well as data to really inform what we're doing in our neighborhoods. And so equity looks like removing lead paint from key census tracts in the city where we're seeing a preponderance of of kiddos that are showing up with elevated blood lead levels and working in partnership with HUD. It looks like litter and addressing cleanliness on the blocks. It looks like education. It looks like community gardens. It looks like adopt it. So we have a whole adopt it initiative, which is like adopt your block, which is litter. It could be adopt a rain garden. It could be adopt a park. Really trying to engage community residents in that. And it gets more and more tricky when we're bringing public resources in and talking about park renovations, when we're going through our master parks plan, and the concerns about gentrification and pushing out neighbors at a time when all of our communities are experiencing a housing crisis. And so that's where we're also bringing in other partners to partner with our land bank and our redevelopment authority to purchase homes, renovate those homes, and sell them to first-time home buyers that are from that same neighborhood. And so it's a collection of things. And so when I think about environmental justice and equity, I'm not just thinking about the traditional environmental issues that may come to mind, maybe for this group, although many of you are working at the intersections of all of this. And I think more and more, that's the work that we have to do to really elevate equity in our communities.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Sorace. I think we've all highlighted some of the great concepts that environmental protection doesn't just exist in an abstract environment. It gets as kind of local and real as planting the necessary tree canopy to make people feel comfortable, and walkability and green spaces all go hand in hand with environmental protection. And also going off of what Mayor Sorace just talked about, she mentioned gentrification, and I saw a pretty great question in the chat that I'd love to throw out to the mayors, which is how do you balance the need for infrastructure improvements, which of course everybody's focused on, and business investments without gentrifying existing communities? And how are you serving each community equitably to ensure environmental success is enjoyed by all residents? So I'd love, if it's okay, to turn that question over to Mayor Wade, if you have any thoughts or opening comments on that.
Yeah, it's really difficult. As I mentioned, Charlottesville is the most expensive place in the Commonwealth to live. Homes here can, average, I think, $600,000-$700,000. Just last year in December, we passed a new zoning ordinance, which is probably, I would venture to guess, the most progressive new zoning ordinance in the whole United States, where we have really upended our whole zoning for this city to allow more housing types and quantity, because we realized that if we didn't, we needed to do something not only to address generational racism and systemic racism that that our zoning ordinance was based on, but in order to keep this city diverse and vibrant, why so many people want to come here. And so really it went into effect in February of this year. We'll be able to see the impacts in in the years to come, but we believe it will be a game changer and allow new development here to keep the city diverse. Our city, we allocate $10 million locally of our funds to address affordable housing. And again, I will venture to say that is, we know it's more than any other locality in the state, and we're a small player, but that is how much we're committed to doing this, putting $10 million of our local money. So it is a concern, not only for council, but the community supports this allocation of their tax dollars for this, but we have to be intentional about this, and so we also understand the importance of our business, because in order for us to put $1 million aside for climate, $10 million aside for affordable housing and things like that, we need a strong economy. We need a strong business base to help us to generate those taxes. And so it has to be a balanced approach. It just, we can't say we don't want businesses and then expect to be able to support these type of initiatives. So it's a constant, issue because we're only 10 square miles. So it's a lot of redevelopment. Those plots of land that maybe in the past were not developable, now they're looking at and seeing how we can develop those parcels. So it just has to be intentional and has to have a lot of community input as we're moving forward, and not assume we know what the residents want without asking them. And for me, one of the things I do is I have a lot of walking meetings. I walk with developers, I walk with constituents, residents, and so that they can see parts of the city maybe they wouldn't see on Main Street and other roads.
Well said. Mayor Williams, do you have any thoughts about how to serve each community equitably to ensure that environmental success is enjoyed by everyone?
What we found is more recently, and each of the mayors will, I think, attest to this, is that this is the first time that we have had the level of access to infrastructure improvements that certainly has not been around in at least 50 to 60 years, if not ever. And what I'm finding is that there are so many things that were not being addressed, particularly through our sewer and stormwater system, is that it was affecting everyone, and particularly the marginalized areas within our neighborhoods within our community. And what we came to understand is that fortunately I had a city council that agreed to go on a tour of the entire city to see what the effects were on stormwater as well as sanitary issues that we were dealing with. And interestingly, they were coming to me saying, well, Mayor, you need to go to Washington and be able to get some resources to be able to do this. And my response was to them, well, we don't qualify. And they kind of looked with a grimace and a furrowed brow as, what do you mean we don't qualify? And I said, our rates are so low that we can't reach out to federal agencies for assistance on these programs. As a result, we entered into a multi-year rate increase. Nobody likes that. Everybody was squealing about this, but what we started able to point out to individuals, if we don't have these improvements, then our treatment plant is not going to have the capacity to be able to allow new business to come in, to be able to hire individuals. Is that the businesses that are presently in place will have to move elsewhere in order to be able to stay in business. And as a result, we have a $262 million improvement plan that's in place. And this is the largest local public improvement project in the history of the state of West Virginia. Now, and this is particularly targeting the marginalized communities. And there are still some folks saying, well, we can't afford the sewer rates right now. Actually, they weren't going to be able to live where they're living right now if we don't find ways of being able to improve these. And frankly, there's a point where, as leaders, that we have to just bow our necks and step up and do what is necessary in order for the long-term growth opportunities for the residents of the community and the community.
Yeah, that's very well said. Another question from the chat that I'm seeing. I mean, clearly you're all proactive leaders in the environmental front and also, many other fronts. But do you have any advice for residents who have long-standing leaders who may disregard some of these, what the chat is terming common sense solutions, common sense environmental solutions? I guess, in other words, what convinces leaders, besides legal action, to initiate green infrastructure, stormwater management, or other general environmental practices? Do you have any kind of tips or ideas for that? And we'll start with Mayor Sorace on that one.
Okay, so I did respond to one of the questions, and I do think that neighborhood organizing is the best way to get going on this, to try to change the narrative, or at least introduce the concept. I do think that, you know, it's interesting. Lancaster farming, which is, we have a lot of agriculture in Lancaster County, routinely talks about these issues, but never talks about climate change or really some of the more progressive framing that might be used in a city, maybe. I'm making broad brushstrokes here, so have grace with me. But I think that that's part of it, is like coming at this both from the economic perspective with Steve, was just talking about, Mayor Williams, as well as just the practical aspects of, we have flooding that we need to address, and we got to figure out how to do this. And these are some of the ways that we need to tackle this. Or, you know, our water quality issues and its impact downstream, and how we have a value about being a good neighbor. And so what does that mean for us collectively? And so, you know, these strategies and tactics really have to be rooted in your community environment and the needs and issues that you have. I mean, more than 3/4 of the city of Lancaster is a designated EJ community. And so when we're talking about competing with the reality that many of our families are spending more than 30% of their incomes on housing costs, with talking about, you know, some of these other issues, we try to connect it. So whether that means like we're just launching a community garden, this means that we're going to help families grow food. This is reducing their food costs, but it's also a benefit to the neighborhood. It's also an environmental benefit to the neighborhood in a variety of ways. And it's also connecting communities and thinking about how they can restore urban spaces to be more beneficial to residents. So to me, it's kind of like, you have to be able to pull the door open, but you have to find different messages that are going to resonate. And also, as somebody who started in this space years ago as a 2-person operation with this little nonprofit, we were using rain barrels as like our gateway to have conversations about clean water, and doing all these rain barrel workshops. That's sort of, that evolved into composting. And now we have neighbors that are setting up composting bins in our parks and training people how to do composting. It's a little bit of like, you gotta wait, you gotta try to crack the door open, and then you gotta be ready to jump through when the door finally opens.
Yeah, similar to what Mayor Williams had mentioned earlier about how it's so important and incumbent upon the community to lift up these efforts and have it a grassroots kind of goal to make these changes happen and to work with folks.
You know, one other thing that I'll just mention is trying to find a connection point to what the priorities are for the leaders that may not be talking about these things, and make those connections. So like, hey, I hear you're talking a lot about X. I just want to make a connection to how this relates to the environment in this way. And can we think about how to mutually reinforce your goals and what we're trying to accomplish? Many people are not great at doing that. But if you are able to do that, then you're at least not coming at it from a confrontational perspective, but how can we make this project better?
Yeah, and again, that touches on Mayor Wade's point from earlier about how even zoning changes might have an impact on both economics and the environment of your community, and which might not be a nexus that necessarily gets made naturally without having, you know, that information presented. So that was a great point. We're coming up on time, and I'm trying to think of the best way to close this out. I know there's a great question about existing building decarbonization planning. So for example, requiring buildings to report energy usage, carbon emissions, things like that. That might be a part of some of our climate action plans, but maybe just a short answer from each of you if you wanted to touch on it. You're looking at existing building decarbonization. Mayor Wade?
Yeah, well, I know we're doing it with all of the local buildings that we control, the schools and the city buildings. but that's a really, I don't know, 5 or 10% of all of the buildings. I like that idea. I'm not sure if we're doing that, but I'm certainly going to talk to staff as something that to see if something we can do. Great idea.
Mayor Williams.
As I look at it, as I'm thinking about this, certainly our codes do speak to this, and we need to make sure that our code enforcement officers understand that as they are doing the broad scope of inspecting and assuring that we're meeting code, also are being properly trained to be able to see that these opportunities on decarbonization and such as that. The one thing that I think is absolutely critical is that, and I believe this wholeheartely, is that if we're going to be demanding it of those within the private sector, then by gosh, we need to be doing it in our own. We've got to tend our own backyard and make sure that we are leading by example. And what I've found, oftentimes, it's easier to be able to regulate when you are doing it yourself first, and then make sure that what we are doing sets the example for others. And then I start to find it doesn't necessarily eliminate the resistance, but it does give an indication that we can point to those things that are the benefits of it and how it translates to others in the private sector.
Thank you. We're coming up on just 2 minutes left. Before I pass it back to our hosts, I just wanted to ask kind of a lighthearted question. You receive a call from a first-time mayor. I'm curious to know what would be your first piece of advice to them. And we'll start in the order that we started the whole call with Mayor Wade. Go ahead.
I would say jump into it. It shouldn't be political, but this is something that you can say that no matter what your political stripe is, that will benefit you personally. You can tell that to everyone, but also your city now and in the future. Jump into it wholeheartedly.
Well said. Mayor Williams.
One, own it. You're in charge. You take ownership of it. If it has to be done, you are the one that has to drive it. Secondly, articulate your vision, build consensus around the vision, and then go out and get it done.
Outstanding. Mayor Sorace.
I have to echo the vision. Really, really important to start out with a really clear and compelling vision to bring people with you. And the second thing is that there are very few decisions that have to be made right now. So lots of listening, learning, and take your time but not too much, because there's a lot of opportunities in each decision that you're making, and you want to get the most out of it, because time ultimately is short. Although congratulations to Mayor Williams for his 3rd term, but man, these years, they fly by. We all feel the expiration date.
Yeah. So jump in, listen, and then own it is the consensus that I'm getting from these 3 wonderful mayors, who I want to thank again so much for joining us. Mayor Wade, Mayor Williams, Mayor Sorace. It's been a great use of time. I truly appreciate your insight, your feedback, and your counsel on all of these really, really important issues. So thank you so much. I look forward to working with you in the future. Hopefully the audience got a good bit out of it. And with that, I will say thank you and turn it over to Brenda.
Thanks, Rob.